Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks again for joining us for the COPEC Daily Webcast broadcast, which we do, of course, every day from 2 to 2:30. We're fortunate again to have Marcia Strall with us. She's joined us a couple times during the month and talking about a variety of issues, all surrounding long-term care. And today, as you see, we'll be talking about assisted living cost, what you can expect from that. And I think she's going to go a little bit further and talk about other type of facilities. As you see on the screen, we're making some disclosures. A number of the speakers are involved with the financial industry and also sit on the board of directors of COPEC. So we wanted to make that disclosure very plain for you. So as I mentioned, and we hope you can join us most every day at 2 o'clock. And also some additional programs that we'll make available and put that out to the public as well. So again, without further ado, we're delighted to have Marcia with us, and she was with us a week or so ago, and she'll kind of pick up on the topic. Marcia, thanks for joining us, and what are you going to tell us about today?
Well, today I thought last time we discussed long-term care and nursing home, I thought we'd do a little bit about assisted living and some of the hidden costs that you might not be aware of, the types of facilities and what to expect as far as care in the assisted livings and how it differs from a long-term care facility.
That would be great.
So, welcome. I'm Marcia Strall, and I am a geriatric care manager with ElderLife Solutions and a member of COPEC. Geriatric care managers kind of help individuals and their families navigate the healthcare system as a person ages, and can also help plan for retirement based on their care needs and medical diagnosis, chronic diagnosis, that type of thing. So we've been in business in the Columbus area for about 20 years and work a lot with long-term care facilities, assisted livings, elder law attorneys, financial planners, everybody. So it's nice to be here today. So I think we'll start talking about assisted livings. Assisted livings are when you need only a limited amount of care. You'll see more, the new builds in the Columbus area are certainly mostly either independent apartments or assisted livings. Based on that, and I am going to try and pull up a slide here if I can. There we go. How about that?
Yep, it's fine.
So most assisted livings, if you're headed into an assisted living or interested, you have to have that level of care requirement. Most assisted livings will come out prior to your admission and assess that you meet their standards for care. It can be something as minimal as you're having confusion with all your medications and you need help with someone giving you the medications or setting them up every day. And maybe, cooking, we see a lot of when someone loses a spouse, an older adult just kind of doesn't want to bother with cooking and taking care of stuff in the house themselves, and will slide into an assisted living just to have a little bit of care, some security as far as the building goes and where they live. There's a whole myriad of reasons. It could be a medical diagnosis, whatever. But most assisted livings will have you come in, ask you a lot of questions about your medical background, certainly about your financial background as well. They want to make sure that you can afford to move in there. There's all ranges of assisted living as far as costs, and we'll hit on that first. Most of the assisted livings, so if you qualify to be part of their admission process, usually everyone is accepted. Even people that still drive are accepted into assisted livings. Most assisted livings have a place, some have garages, some have carports, some just have surface parking. But certainly you are allowed to continue to drive and as long as you're safe and get out there and move around and live your life. this assessment process comes when maybe the person has a chronic medical issue. Maybe the care that they need is more than the assisted living can give them. Assisted livings by law in Ohio are not staffed at the same ratio, caregivers and nurses to patients. So you have fewer caregivers to come in and assist you. So that's something to be aware of. If your loved one or yourself needs more help, maybe even getting on and off the toilet, every time you use the bathroom, you put the call light on, you may have to wait because there's only maybe 1 to 15 or 1 to 20, one caregiver for that many people. And based on, you know, the type of people that the assisted living has as their residents, if there's a lot of people that need that higher level of care, that institutes a longer wait until you can get somebody to help you. Those are all questions to ask as you go in. You know, you can go in, I always say visit around the lunchtime because you can see how many people are in wheelchairs. Not that that means that they can't transfer themselves, but you want to get a feel for how active a community it is. Are they more medically based to give a higher level of care? Do they have more residents that require that higher level of care? Most
And
assisted
Marcia, I
Go
actually
ahead.
wanted to ask a question on that if I could. Are some of them like have medical personnel on staff and some are like non-medical, or maybe you were going
Well, all assisted livings have resident caregivers. Um, uh, Most of them, all of them have at least a nurse there on site during the day. Usually they're there 8 to 8 or 8 to 11 to pass medications. That would be an LPN or sometimes an RN. But a lot of assisted livings, if they're freestanding assisted livings, do not have an RN 24/7. Those folks go home at night. The resident caregivers are there overnight and can call in a nurse if needed. But a lot of freestanding assisted livings do not have a nurse overnight. Now, some do. The reason I mention that is because a lot of long-term care policies that you might want to use for your assisted living, most of them require that you have a nurse 24/7 on site. So
Okay.
that's something to look at.
Okay, appreciate it.
And some assisted livings will have a medical director, a doctor that comes in, perhaps a dentist even, a podiatrist. Usually they have hairdressers that come in. During COVID, of course, no one was allowed in the building except for medical personnel. But in Ohio, things, at least in the Columbus area, things in that respect are starting to open up. A lot of facilities are allowing the hairdressers to come back. People can get a haircut. They can see the podiatrist. Some are even starting to bring the dentist back in. So basically, when you're looking for an assisted living, you want to look at aesthetics, obviously. The nice thing about most assisted livings is that you have a private room. The size of those rooms vary with each facility, and you have a private bath. So you have, usually it's almost like a studio apartment. It's fairly large. Some have like a small kitchenette, some don't. It just depends on the facility and what you're looking for. But they will give you a daily rate. Most daily rates right now run anywhere from, I don't know, $160, I'd say, give or take. Some are higher than that. It can be up to $200 a day. And that's just for room and board. There's a lot of extras that go into that. So if you need, they add on the level of care. Level of care, each facility is a little different. Some have 3 levels of care, some have 5 levels of care. It just depends on the facility. So that's another question to ask. What are the costs for each level of care? And if all I need is my medications given to me, I can shower, I can take myself to the bathroom, you know, I walk, all of that. What would my care level be? And usually that's the lowest care level. In some facilities, medications are included in that base rate. So it just depends on the facilities. Everybody has a different structure as far as costs. But there's a lot of a la carte items too that you don't take into consideration. If you're sick and you can't go to the dining room and have to have a meal delivered, that's an extra charge. It can be up to $8 per meal to be delivered to your room.
Wow.
We see assisted livings, yeah, with that much. Laundry is charged usually weekly or monthly, whichever you work out with them. That's an additional charge. Some meal plans are extra. Some assisted livings have a higher independent residence, and they usually will serve maybe continental breakfast, and that's included in the initial room and board, and one other meal. So you could go for lunch or you could go for dinner. Some places don't have any meal plans included in the base rate, and you pay extra for all meals. So it just depends on, again, the facility. And again, that's a question to ask about how their meal plans work. Some of it, it's all inclusive. It just depends on the facility.
Hey, Marcia.
Yeah.
How do they handle if there's a spouse involved, but that spouse is healthy but wants to stay with their assisted living spouse?
Absolutely. Usually that's allowed. You are in an assisted living, so they prorate the second person in the room. Usually the person that has the higher acuity that they need to help the most, that level of care will be added to that base rate. And then there's an additional charge on a monthly basis or daily basis for the second person.
Oh, thank you.
And usually they will work to put couples together, and usually the couples are in a larger room, maybe even a setup where there's one bedroom and then a living room. You actually have two different rooms. Because certainly in a studio apartment, it's tough for two people to live in that and keep all their stuff in there. So absolutely, it's doable. It just depends on the facility, and you have to look and ask questions in regard to that. Sometimes parking can also be extra, especially if you want a garage. They have the garages available, you'll pay for that. Storage units are also extra a lot of times. If you're at the point where you're requiring maybe some toileting help with maybe Depends or wipes or things like that, they can supply them there. But again, your costs are going to be higher on your bill. It's one thing to watch. I always tell my clients to be careful, to watch their bills, that they're not being overcharged. I see a lot of people being charged for that type of toileting assistance, and then maybe 3 days later they get another charge of the same thing. And certainly you don't use that much product in a matter of a couple days. So it's a good idea in assisted livings to take a look at your bill every month, because assisted livings can go all the way up to $8,000 or $9,000, especially if the person is in a secured dementia unit. Those costs are usually at a higher level of care. They don't piece them out. Assisted livings that offer that security for dementia folks, usually that's all included in the daily rate. Everything is included as well. So in order to pay for assisted living, it's private pay, basically, the bottom line. One thing that Medicaid in Ohio Medicaid does have an assisted living waiver program, but not all assisted livings participate in that program. And let's say a facility has, it's a 50-unit facility. Not all of those rooms are going to be Medicaid eligible. So most places that do take the Medicaid waiver make assurances to their residents that they have to private pay for a period of time. Usually it's 18 months to 3 years that they expect that person to be able to private pay at the cost that they're going in at. And then after that, they can make application with Job and Family Services for the Medicaid waiver. Most people that are on the Medicaid waiver can't be in a larger apartment. Usually the Medicaid waiver apartments are those studio apartments. So if I know that if I'm counseling a client that's going into an assisted living, I know that their finances are going to last 3 years, but not much longer, and they don't mind being in a studio apartment to start out, I always say, let's just go into that studio apartment, get set up. That way you don't have to move within the facility when you do apply for the Medicaid waiver. And usually the facilities will assist you with that to make that application. And most of the care coordinators in the facilities have a connection at Job and Family Services and can assist with the application and help guide the resident through that. But again, you're looking at private pay monies for at least 18 months to 3 years, depending on the facility. And again, always ask, do you take the Medicaid waiver? And just because they take the Medicaid waiver doesn't mean that at the time you need it, it's going to be available. Because again, out of those 50 beds or however many units they have, not all of those are Medicaid. So be aware of that as well. There's no guarantees. Another way to help pay for the assisted living is long-term care insurance. On an average, I would say most long-term care policies that I see kind of reimburse between $120 and $150 a day for room and board. So you can kind of gauge if you have long-term care insurance and you qualify for that long-term care insurance with assistance in activities of daily living, they can cover that up to a point, but it's usually not covered at 100% with the long-term care insurance. VA monies are available too with aid and attendance for veterans, or if the veteran has passed on and they have a spouse that's in in assisted living, you could apply for aid and attendance for that spouse as well. And like I said, the Medicaid waiver in some facilities is available, but it's limited. Not every facility takes the Medicaid waiver for assisted living. So if no one has any other questions, I'll go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about expectations for care. You should expect most assisted livings do have private rooms with private bathrooms. Some have begun to allow, especially when someone goes on to the Medicaid waiver program, some allow a semi-private room. And also in some dementia units that are assisted living, you'll see a sharing of the room with another resident. But for the most part, expect a private room or a private apartment. It could be up to 1 or 2 bedrooms, depending on the facility and how much you want to pay per month as far as square footage. You should expect that there would be a physician on call and that visits that facility. Typically, you're not forced to use their physician like you are when you become a resident at a long-term care facility. When you're in an assisted living, you can continue to go out to your own primary care physician, but sometimes it can be a good time to switch. Because the nurses are able to contact that physician that's associated with the facility relatively quickly, especially if it's a weekend and you have a cold or spike a temp or whatever it might be, they can get a hold of somebody to call in order to help you out. So those are questions to ask. You know, also, how often does the doctor come to the facility? Because most physicians that are listed as medical directors use the nurse practitioners as their on-site gals. Some are there depending on the facility, some are there every day, some are there 2 days a week, and you only see the physician maybe once a month or every 3 months. It just depends on the facility, and that's something to ask, especially if you have a high acuity with medical problems. When you go in, they're going to establish what they call a plan of care. That plan of care will also tell you what level of care you are, and that level of care equals dollars amounts. an increase in dollars amounts. So a lot of times when people come in, especially maybe from the hospital or have been failing at home, they come in at a higher level of acuity, and that care plan should should reflect that. But don't just take that as what it has to be all the time. A lot of folks that are failing at home or, for whatever reason, need more of a structured environment. And when they get to assisted living where someone's making their meals, they're eating with other people, they're having more social engagement, they tend to blossom and feel better, get stronger, and really be able to hold their own. So in about 6 months after going into a facility, if you're at a high level of care and feel like you've improved or your loved one has improved, you need to ask for a care conference to reevaluate that plan of care and maybe have that level of care reduced, because that can happen. They usually use a point system, and the point system can affect, your monthly charges. So it's good to review that at least every 6 months.
Marcia,
Yes?
I know people in your profession actually help people develop a plan of care, maybe even before they go into assisted living. If that's the case, would you be coordinating with the facility personnel since you have a great knowledge of the patient?
Yeah. We work real closely with our clients that are going in. But again, the facility is going to determine that. We can tell them our opinion and how they've been functioning at home and what our concerns are and why they've made the choice to go into assisted living. But the facility themselves will assess whether or not what level of care that they go into.
Okay.
And nursing care available, like I mentioned, it's not always 24/7 that they have a nurse available. And be aware of that if you plan on using your long-term care insurance to help pay for some of your costs, because most long-term care companies do require an on-site nurse 24/7. Now, in the situation where you have a larger campus, in the Columbus area, maybe like Westminster Thurber, or a place that has skilled nursing along with it, that nurse is on the skilled nursing unit 24/7, but maybe not right on the assisted living unit. That still is a nurse on site 24/7. There's a couple of facilities throughout central Ohio that maybe have skilled nursing on one side and assisted living on the other. But there's always a nurse in the building, because on that skilled side, on that long-term care side, that nurse needs to be there 24/7. And that counts for the assisted living, because all they have to do is she just has to walk over if needed. So you're covered there for 24/7 nursing if you're thinking of going into an assisted living, that has that set up. Resident aides are available, like I said. If there's a lot of residents in the building that are high medical acuity, you want to ask how many care managers or resident aides do you have per unit, per 18 people? Is it one person to 18? Is it one person to 20? Is one person covering 30 apartments? You want to know that, because that's how long you're going to have to wait for care if something comes up that's not on a regular scheduled routine. And probably that's the biggest complaint I hear from people when they go into assisted living. I have to wait a while to get somebody to come and help me do things that aren't on their regular routine. Usually in the morning, the aides have a routine. They come and see you and help you get up based on when you like to wake up and get going, if you need that kind of help. When it becomes an issue is when you have bathroom problems or other problems that you need someone just to pop in and help out with, and you push, call your call light and you don't get anybody in for a certain period of time. 15 minutes is usually the maximum you should have to wait. If you're consistently waiting longer than that, you need to speak to the director of the facility about your wait times for care. Meals, like I said, some meals plans, all 3 meals are included. Some only include 1 meal a day. Some include 2 meals a day. Some you can buy into it, you know, however you want, whatever meal plan. It's kind of like going to college, you know, you can buy 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day, or 3 meals a day. It's just whatever they offer. So ask that question and the costs associated with that. But that's also a way to keep your costs down. Most assisted livings in those apartments have a refrigerator. You're able to have a small toaster, maybe even a toaster oven or a microwave, so that making your lunch or your breakfast might be easy. If you're a cereal person in the morning with coffee, and then, you know, your soup and sandwich for lunch, maybe you only need 1 hot meal a day. And sometimes that could be at noon, or that could be in the evening. So that's a way to cut costs as well when you're going in. When you're in an assisted living, if you need therapy, Medicare looks at an assisted living as a private home because you're paying privately to stay there. So you would need a doctor's order. It would be outpatient under your Part B to get OT, PT, or speech therapy in. You'd need a doctor's order, and they wouldn't come every day. Typically it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week, just depending on what your therapy needs are. But again, they look at that as outpatient therapy, not inpatient, where a skilled facility where you get all of your therapy once or twice a day. This would be under the Part B program, your Medicare Part B, if you have Medicare Part B or your Advantage plan. It still would be, you would see a therapist once or twice a week for about 45 minutes to an hour. You should also expect, you know, kind of a higher level of activities and social opportunities and outings, because, you know, most people that go into assisted living are able to drive or able to get around fairly easily. So your expectations for activities, you know, and activities in and out of the facility are at a high level. And there's a place for everybody. Some places are more active, some places are more sedentary. It's good to look. I usually encourage people to look in the geographic area where they're living, so that they're friends or near where family live, because that encourages people to visit more often when we're able, after COVID goes away and we're all healthy again and don't have these restrictions in place. So that's, you know, I think the biggest care expectations you could have for assisted living. What people need to remember is you need to qualify typically. You need to be that level of care that they can take care of you, and also have the money to do it. You have to have some private monies to go in and pay for a period of time.
Marcia, we did have one question coming in, and I know you're going to talk about skilled nursing homes maybe in a different program, but is there kind of an easy way to distinguish between assisted living, or when would you need to progress maybe to skilled? I don't know if that's a fair question in a short amount of time,
but I think that it's valid because, again, first, as you're in assisted living, if you're not, your needs for a caregiver to be in with you and help you out is more than you're getting. You know, you push that button and you have to wait longer and longer periods of time. A series of falls maybe where you're not ambulating very well. I think, and typically the assisted living will try and keep you as long as you can. Sometimes assisted living administrators will say to families or to the individual, maybe it's best for you to get a private caregiver to come in to assist you because your care needs have increased. At that point, you're looking at charges for not only the facility, but for a private caregiver on top of that. Some people that can afford it will choose that. Other people know that that's the time then to go to skilled nursing.
Well, this has been tremendous. Marcia, really appreciate you being with us again. You're a tremendous resource, and I know I've learned a lot. I hope those that have tuned in have learned a lot as well. And I've put up your contact information there again. If any of you need a really great independent, and I will stress the word independent, feel free to contact Marcia. So thank you folks for joining us. Thank you again, Marcia. Our time is at hand to close it up. We probably will keep the line open for a few extra minutes in case some late questions come in. But thanks so much, and please join us again tomorrow and in the future.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.